welcome to Metro News 1. I'm Robin Shabatsky.
And I'm Sandy Rivers. Tonight we will be analyzing the effects of the Supreme Court's ruling in the revolutionary case of Gitlow versus New York.
This all began in the years following the infamous Red Scare, a period in the early 1920s marked by widespread terror and suspicion of anarchy and communism. A general sense of paranoia was lurking within society. During this time, members of communist and socialist parties faced the imminent danger of conviction due to their bold writings and statements under the pretense that it violated the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918.
Benjamin Gitlow, an active member of the Socialist Party, was charged with criminal anarchy after releasing a document called the Left-Wing Manifesto, which contained vicious anti-government claims.
His trial lasted from January 22nd to February 5th, 1920. The decision regarding his conviction has recently been released. We now turn to our ground reporter, who is at the Supreme Court trial. Take it away, Patrice.
The Supreme Court just released the groundbreaking decision regarding the case. After a 13-day battle over the capacity of freedom of speech, Gitlow has been officially convicted and sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison, despite his fervent arguments that the manifesto represents historical analysis rather than advocacy. Mr. Gitlow was initially charged with criminal anarchy, and on his behalf, attorney Clarence Darrow argued that because this law limited his right to freedom of speech, Gitlow's conviction should be overturned. In other words, any law that limits an individual's freedom of speech is ultimately unconstitutional. Although they may not agree with the content of Gitlow's pamphlets, many people see the validity in his argument. To further understand the conclusion of the Supreme Court justices, we asked Professor Marshall Erickson of Columbia University to join us here today. Mr. Erickson, should Gitlow's claim be validated by the courts?
Thanks for having me, Patrice. The interesting and important detail of this case to remember is that Benjamin Gitlow was convicted under New York's criminal anarchy law. While he has the right to make any claims he chooses, he distributed written works that were deemed by the Supreme Court justices to advocate the violent overthrow of the United States government. Justice Edward T. Stanford, who sides with the majority, has said since the release of the ruling that freedom of expression is protected on the state level by the 14th Amendment. However, Stanford also noted that a state may punish utterances that threat to endanger the foundation of the government, especially by unlawful means. Therefore, while Gitlow will be convicted under the New York's criminal anarchy law, the constitutionality of the law may be called into question.
Professor Erickson, what are your thoughts on Justice Holmes' statement, in contradiction to the ruling, that unless the speech can be linked to direct and immediate acts of violence, it should be permitted?
The distributed pamphlets were found to incite unlawful overthrow of the government by the court, then the person should be convicted. As a resident of New York, I feel that we should be protected from danger.
Time, Professor. Back to you, Sandy and Robin.
Very insightful, and thank you very much for your time.
You know, I truly believe that this decision will have considerable repercussions regarding freedom of speech on both a federal and local level.
True. This is a redefining moment for the limits of speech freedom, as well as the application of the 14th Amendment to state governments. It does, after all, reverse the court's former ruling in Barron v. Baltimore of 1833, in which the rights defined in the Bill of Rights were only applicable to federal law.
Good point, Robin. This new ruling, while still finding Gitlow guilty, does reinforce that, due to the 14th Amendment, the Bill of Rights must be upheld at the state level. We'll have to wait and see what comes next. Thanks for choosing Metro News 1. I'm Sandy Rivers.
And I'm Robin Shabatsky. Have a great night.